I want to thank you all for participating in our water communion this year. It takes some guts to share a piece of yourself, and it can feel a little bit like bragging sometimes when we talk about our experiences and our insight. A few years ago, I was invited to participate in a workshop for progressive thinkers to encourage them to write more editorials. It was a great mix of people. Some were freelance writers, some were academics, some were activists. I was the only clergy person. But one of the first exercises we did was designed to get us comfortable with claiming and positioning ourselves as an authority on a particular topic. The exercise was to list out all your experience or education related to a particular topic and to sell yourself as an expert. They said, and I deeply believe, that hardly anyone exaggerates the depth of their knowledge in these exercises. Far more often, people talk down about what they have accomplished or learned from experience. We all had different passions and experiences to be expert in. The thing that came to my mind in the moment was about immigration detention. For the exercise, I began listing my credibility on the issue, and I realized that I was part of a leadership team of Friends of Orange County detainees that had, at that point, logged over 10,000 face-to-face visits with people in immigration detention. I had personally visited 3 different immigration detention facilities in the area and logged probably 100 visits at that point. I was the minister of a church where members had served as sponsors for probably 10 to 15 different migrants seeking asylum. And at that point, I was the sponsor of an asylum seeker myself, someone who was living with me at the time. As I listed these things, I felt a bit of an awakening. I am far from an expert on immigration policy. The details of that are a mess and way too complicated, and several Tapestry members know way more than I do about the topic. But I am intimately aware of the psychological experience of immigration detention. I have repeatedly witnessed the blatant injustice of the system that determines not just who stays in the U.S., but often who survives. I'm not talking all of this today to convince you that I'm an expert in immigration issues. I'm talking about all this to explain that even with all that experience and proximity to the issue, I hadn't really thought of myself as having any particular valuable perspective to share on the issue. And I suspect there are things that you have done and seen for a very long time that supply you with a depth of knowledge. It's not necessarily academic learning. Each of you is deeply knowledgeable about something, probably a few things. If there's any homework from this sermon or this week, it's for you to go home and repeat this exercise for yourself. Sit down and write. This is important. Don't just think about it. You need to fill the page up so you see your experience. Sit down and write out all the things that make you an expert on some area of your life, preferably something that is not your primary occupation. That deep knowledge is a gift that you bring with you in the world and to this community of seekers. Many of you understand yourselves as curious people. You like learning new things and being challenged. The learning that we do here isn't about one person having the answer, though. Quite the opposite. We're here to learn from one another. That's part of why the board and I were eager to host Casey as an intern this year. Yes, we have some experience to share with her, But she's also in school right now. She's having those juicy conversations about Unitarian Universalism, and I want to know what's going on. And I feel a little bit like a dinosaur for saying this, but I'm also excited to have a younger perspective here at Tapestry. And if you haven't read the newsletter yet, Casey will be with us for the next 2 years as a half-time ministerial intern. You'll get to know quite a bit more about her in future months. Typically, when we celebrate water communion, we focus on the coming together in unity. The idea of the same element of water around the world gives a powerful sense of connection. That same element, though, takes on a great diversity of forms. How many of you heard the thunderstorm Thursday night? It was awesome. I was just getting ready for bed, and I saw the first flash before I heard the boom, and I thought something was wrong with my eyes. Storms like that are way too rare here in Southern California. And that dramatic, angry clap of thunder, such a powerful reminder of nature. More often around here, we think of water as a soothing presence for our parched land. As a personal fan of the Sierra Nevada mountains, I was fascinated to learn that John Muir had hypothesized that that great, rugged granite landscape with boulders strewn everywhere was formed by glaciers, sliding, scraping ever so slowly. In our own human world, water takes on great power too. It's a form of political resistance. We heard about the water protectors in our Time for All Ages. I've also heard incredible stories of people taking water to drop in strategic locations in the desert along the Mexican border to sustain migrants on their journey. To call all this diversity just water, to say it's all the same, while true, seems to be a great disservice to its innumerable different manifestations. Last week, if you were here, I talked about a famous sermon by William Ellery Channing from 1819. Yes, I preached a sermon about a sermon. Isn't that riveting? But in a conversation afterward, one of our very active members who's really invested in Unitarian Universalism confided in me that after the sermon, she felt more confused about our history, particularly the theology. She said that Universalism is pretty straightforward. Unitarianism, though, seemed to have so many different influences. I can't really put my finger on it, she said. I reassured her that her confusion was right on target. Our history is big, a big mix of influences and beliefs. The sermon that I talked about last week was about how our earliest Unitarian Christians sort of saw the world. But shortly after that one, the Transcendentalists came along, who brought a whole different perspective. Rather than accessing truth through the Bible, or even science or reason, they said that we could access the sacred through our own individual direct experience. They said, and I know a lot of us would agree, that a lot of that access comes through experiencing nature. And then these Transcendentalists got influenced by Hindu texts. Yes, Hinduism in Unitarianism. So that Emerson's description of the soul is shockingly similar to Hindu descriptions of the soul. There's nothing confusing about that. Then in the 1930s, the Unitarians, especially the ministers, joined in signing the Humanist Manifesto. And they started talking about this new concept at the time. They talked about a religion without God. The way many of you experience and express your relationship to Tapestry, a religion without God, emerged as humanism in Unitarianism. For many of us, the theistic ideas of Channing still ring true. For others, the ideas of transcendentalism make sense. Still others find their faith in a mixture of the tradition of their family, strongly influenced by the lens of Unitarian Universalism. This is all to say, if Unitarianism is confusing to you, that means you're paying attention. You've heard me and probably other ministers express a huge range of different ideas that are part of our tradition. While that's confusing, and it's not easy to explain, it's also a tremendous reflection of who we are. So don't come here to be with people that think just like you. Come here to be with people who are curious to learn from one another and be open to the world. Don't come here to be with people who share your particular beliefs. Come here to be with people who have found the courage to share what they know in their heart. People who are willing to learn and grow. People who are willing to change and be changed. Amen.